There are basically all different kind of data category come under the corporate data. So below is the list of all data categories. So what you can do, you can just pause the video and make a note of all this list if you want. But the data type what we're going to focus, which is the employee and user data, because this is the data what attacker is basically looking for. So once attacker get the access or information from the employee and user data, the other data category become the part of the attack, or basically the chain of the attack, right? So for any organization, this employee and user data basically act as a boundary, and once attacker is able to hack into this boundary, he will be able to hack into other system or other data categories which is sits behind this employee and user data. So that is the reason we are going to focus more upon the employee and user data, and as we proceed, the other data category is going to be covered on its own. So the first data type come under the employee and user data, which is the personal identifiable information. This is also known as PII, alright? So which are the information and the data is basically stored under this PII, or personally identifiable information. So let's have one example. Let's say one of the user joined the company, right? So one of the user, when he joins, become the employee of that company. So HR is basically going to ask like some of the basic information and the document for that user or employee to be submitted, right? The information like their name, their date of birth, their residential address, their phone number, then their government ID like social security number, like their passport, maybe their any provided government ID belong to that specific country. And the next, personal email ID. Sometimes they ask for you need to submit your personal email ID, so that they're going to contact you on that ID, right? And another can come, which is if you are like IT background and if you are going to like submit your document, they will also ask you for your professional certificates. And the last, but it could be optional, they might also ask you to present your financial information, maybe transaction detail or maybe bank detail or something like that. So this kind of data can come under the PII, or personal identifiable information. Now the question is how this data can be misused by an attacker or hacker. So let's have some of the example about the attacks. So the first attack comes, which is identity theft. So what attacker is gonna do basically, once he able to hack into one of the corporate data, for example in HR department, then he going to gather all the information related to PII. Now let's take an example about Bob, right? So once attacker is able to get the information about Bob, his name, his email address, his date of birth, his phone number, or his government ID, or any kind of information he can misuse against Bob. So what he can do, he can opt for a credit card. So he has to just present all this document, and there are the chances he might get the credit card from the bank. The another identity theft he can do, like he opt for loans as well. Sometimes the bank provide the loans based upon this all the documents, and he can also make some purchases if the purchases depend totally upon the document what you submit, right? So this is like some of the example about the identity theft. Now the next attack he can launch, which is financial fraud. Let's say the attacker was able to get the email ID for the Bob, and he was also able to successfully hack into email ID. Now the question would be, is it possible to hack into the email ID for the Bob? There are the chances, because the attacker has all the information related to his like PII, so his social security number, date of birth and name and everything like that, right? So sometimes what attacker do, they do or put all this information into their AI machine or something like that. Then AI actually generate the password based upon this information. So there would be some of the password which will be belong to the PII information, and there will be some password which is based upon the dictionary attack. So attacker might use all this password by using the brute force attack, and he might try to hack into email ID, right? And let's say if the email ID is hacked, then of course what he gonna do, he may going to do financial fraud, which is the steal money by logging into the bank. Like if he was unsuccessful, then of course he's going to do the forget password, something like that. We had this in detail in earlier recording if you want to take a look. Yes. Now the next attack can happen, which is the privacy breach. Now in this what happened basically, once attacker has this information about Bob, he will sell this information into the black market. So now you might be wondering sometime where the call coming from the different countries. Sometimes come from the marketing department, sometimes come from scammers, or the fraud calls are come to you. Sometimes the call come that you have won the lottery or something like that. So these are all come from because your PII or your data has been leaked into the public domain, and this happens when the attacker gets this information, they sell into the black market, right? Now what is the solution to protect from such attacks? So let's have a discussion about this. So the first solution is enable multi-factor authentication. So whenever it's possible, any services what you are using which needs the username and password, you should be enabling the MFA, which is multi-factor authentication. So this can be like a combination of the two information, like your username and password plus your OTP, or plus it can be your fingerprint or your facial recognition, right? But always use MFA, and especially if it is a banking website, you have to enable MFA. All right. The another precaution you should use, which is using the strong and unique password. Sometimes we have habit to using password which is like easy to remember, because we do not want to use password which is like very complex, because sometimes we need to do some work, and we at the time we are not able to remember the password, right? And that makes us annoyed. That totally understandable, but the problem is this is the advantage for the attackers. They know which are the passwords you might gonna use based upon their dictionary password, and that is the reason they are able to hack into your email ID or our email ID basically, right? So this is really important for us to use strong and unique password. Now the next step we should take, which is avoid sharing any sensitive information into public domain or save any document which is sensitive into email. For example, if you have credit card and debit card, sometimes we store into our email, because sometimes we need that credit card number to make some purchases, and the easiest way to like go and access email and just see that snapshot, right? But let's say if that email get hacked, the attacker has a good chance to misuse this information for unauthorized purchases, right? Similar to that, we should not be storing any sensitive information in public domain. The information like your sensitive documents or the document related to your projects or innovation. All right. Now the next step we should take, which is like monitor any suspicious activity. For example, if there is some unauthorized or authorized transaction happen, the bank send an SMS or they also send an email. So always keep an eye on if the SMS or email coming from the bank, if there is any suspicious activities going, or if someone is doing some unauthorized transaction, immediately you should call to bank and ask them to, there was some unauthorized like transactions happen, so they should block card temporarily until you understand if that transaction was valid or not, right? So these are the few steps we can take to protect ourselves from attackers.